Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2013 State of the County Committee breakfast. For those of you that may not know me, I'm Chad Baker. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Democratic Party of York County, and I will be your MC here for this morning. So we're here for the State of the County Committee breakfast. Where have we been? Where have we come from in the last year? We re-elected our president. We re-elected our U.S. Senator Bob Casey. Absolutely. We re-elected our state treasurer, Rob McCord. We elected for the first time a Democratic woman to Attorney General in Kathy Kelly. We elected for the first time in decades a York County to a state office in our Auditor General, Eugene Pasquale. We elected a Democrat representing part of York County to the state Senate in Rob Teplitz. These are major accomplishments for the Democratic Party, both here in York County and on a state level, as well as a national level. And Chairman Kefauver is going to speak to many of those points in a few minutes in his address. But now, the Republicans did have a hand in helping us out. Anybody remember legitimate rate, binders full of women, and 47%? You know, all of those things made us realize how far the Democratic Party has come and how far back the Republicans have moved. I spoke to a number of people this morning. Those of you that follow me on Facebook probably saw I was out late last night because my wife and I finally, after 4 months, went to see the movie Lincoln. On the way home, I began to comment to my wife how far the Republican Party has fallen from the party of Lincoln. Lincoln stood for equality for all. Today, we have Republicans in the State House and the Governor's Mansion, as well as in D.C. and in the Supreme Court, trying to take away voting rights through their blatant voter suppression efforts. We have a Republican in Scott Perry in the U.S. House who voted against the Violence Against Women Act this past week. You know, we have fallen. The Republicans have fallen. I said we. Oh my goodness. I'm going to get run out of this room before I even get started. So, we continue to see Republicans voting for themselves on their big business or their big business supporters instead of for the people. Rather than compromise, Republicans would rather allow $85 billion to be hacked from the budget rather than care for those that it would actually affect. They don't want their donors hurt, but they want the middle class and the working class to suffer. This state's governor has announced he'll refuse aspects of the Affordable Care Act. What is baffling is the president, the force behind that bill, was reelected in November. He won Pennsylvania with a majority of the vote, and yet the governor has chosen to ignore the people's will. In the movie Lincoln, if you've seen it, one of his cabinet members accuses him at one point of being a dictator and ignoring the law when he passed the Emancipation Proclamation, now 150 years old. Lincoln's response to that was that if the people felt he was a dictator or superseding the law, they wouldn't have reelected him in 1864. He stated he gave them a year and a half to think about what the proclamation stood for, and they still reelected him. President Obama gave the people of this country plenty of time to think about the Affordable Care Act, and he was still elected by a significant margin. According to Lincoln's logic, who many consider to be the father of the Republican Party, the people have spoken. The governor needs to consider this when blocking the president and his legislation. Time and time again, we see Republicans are not representing the people. In the movie, Thaddeus Stevens, who, if anyone knows me, I got a personal tie there to Thaddeus Stevens, but Thaddeus Stevens states he was elected by the people to lead, to be a leader. Republicans need to take the advice of their own historical figures and realize their track record over the past few years has not been for the people. It has been against them. When Republicans say they want America to be what it was in the 50s and 60s, I never realized they were talking about 1850 and 1860. So with that said, I want to, again, welcome everyone to our breakfast this morning. We're going to have a number of speakers that you'll see here in just a few minutes. At this time, I'd like to welcome to the podium the President of York City Council, Carol Hill Evans, to introduce our first guest this morning. Carol?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It is my honor to introduce Judge Joe Waters. He is a judge of the Municipal Court, 1st Judicial District of Pennsylvania, 21 years in the Philadelphia Police Force, retiring as captain, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, Board Chairman, Self-Help Movement Drug and Alcohol Rehab Center, former board member, Pennsylvania Special Olympics, and board member of Catch Incorporated, a community-based mental health organization. And he eats a mean breakfast. Allow me to introduce, please, Judge Joe Waters.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank Chairman Kiefhoffer and my new meth girlfriend. Where's Ruth at? Ruth. All right, Ruth is a big help to me at State Committee. Real quick about me. I graduated high school in 1971. I joined the Marine Corps in 72. I joined the Philadelphia Police Department in 77. I retired in 1989 with the rank of captain. I got all my education at night. I didn't really start college until I was 32 years old. While working 2 jobs. I was a cop and I worked in the Inquirer. I finished my education. I graduated law school at 41. And in addition to working 2 jobs and getting an education at night and getting promoted 4 times in the police department, I received a Fulbright scholarship. I went to England and I worked at the London Metropolitan Police Department in their use of force policies. In addition to all that, I got tired. But what I bring to this position is something that's lacking up there now. Right now, the makeup of the Superior Court is 11-4, all right, Republican and Democrat. The seat that's available is a Democratic seat, Judge Mizmano's seat. When we break down the numbers, 10 of the people on the Superior Court out of the 15 are from Allegheny County. We have no representation truly on the east side of the state. There's 3 judges on the east side of the state that sit on that court out of 15. We need to understand that. We need to understand that there are not people up there that sign the back of a paycheck or have ever signed the back of a paycheck for a living, all right? We need to bring a working class perspective to that. I believe I bring that. I grew up in a housing project. I didn't start college till I was in my 30s. I'm not anybody's definition of what an appellate court judge should look like when you look at the elitist perspective of what happens up there. But I bring a perspective that does not exist up there. I bring a working class, common sense, struggle perspective that we need to have up there. We need to have people who work for a living represented in those positions. We need to understand that we have to have a voice. We are not flyover states. You know, we are people who matter. We are people who have to have a representation because the Superior Court is where law is made. They handle 8,000 cases a year. The Supreme Court handles whatever it feels like handling, and I don't mean to denigrate the Supreme Court. Obviously, I work for them. But they have the position of taking cases that they deem to be right for decision, and they have the luxury of deciding that not to take a case. The Superior Court does not have that luxury. They handle 8,000 cases a year, and we need to be able to have a representation up there. In addition to that, I am the only person in this race in the Democratic Party who is endorsed by the party and who is recommended by the Bar Association. Now, those of us that were on state committee know what the fight we had up at state committee to win the nomination and the endorsement. We won the endorsement 199-62. Then the individual who lost stayed in the race, then he got out of the race. And then right after he got out of the race on Tuesday, Allegheny County put somebody else in the race. Now, the individual who's in the race is a guy by the name of Jack McVeigh. I do not know him. I assume he is an honorable man. However, he has not participated in the vetting process. I've been talking with Chairman Kiefhoffer since October. We've had constant communication. This is not my first trip to York. I find it a little offensive that you decide to get into a race that's going to be a statewide race. It's so important to the Democratic Party. And halfway through the petition process and not participating in any of the vetting and not participating in state committee and then decide that, you know, you're a viable candidate. I don't believe that he is. I believe that I'm the guy that can beat the Republicans. I believe that I'm going to get Republican votes because of who I am and where I come from. They're not going to get any of our votes, but I'm going to get their votes. And I'm and again, and Ruth will bear this out. Chairman will bear this out. My promise is nobody will work harder at this than me. All right, I got up at 30 this morning, got lost 3 times, got here 1 time, but fortunately I drive like a cop. You know, so I mean, I could make up time. But nobody in this race is going to work harder for me, and I understand that I will represent all the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. All right, the East, the West, the North, the South, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, York, Harrisburg. That's my goal. I want your votes. I need your votes. I can keep this seat for us. Nobody will work harder at it than me. I promise you that. My petition is floating around here. I need 150 signatures out of your county to survive a challenge. I want you to be a filing county for me. I appreciate your help. I want your vote. Joe Waters, see you in May and in November, and I'll be back. Thank you.
As a member of state committee, I can attest that Judge Waters has been working hard to get support. The week before state committee, I think he called me more times on my cell phone than my wife did to try to catch me. So he has been working diligently thus far, and it is a shining example of, I think, what's yet to come as well. So thank you, Judge. We appreciate it. As he said, we do have petitions available for the judges this morning. Please take the opportunity, if you are here this morning, sign the petition. We would thoroughly appreciate that if you're able to do so. Couple housekeeping items. First and foremost, just to give you a preview of something that's coming up. A few months ago, we received a pretty generous donation from the York Revolution. Opening day is just a few months away here at the stadium, this beautiful stadium that we have, and we're going to recognize a few people who helped make that happen here in a few minutes as well. But we have a certificate here for 10 tickets for opening day. So just to give you kind of this is our 15-second commercial that we're going to be auctioning this off. You're going to get to see my auctioneering talents here in a few minutes. I apologize in advance. But it is for 10 tickets for opening day. I don't have the date in front of me for opening day, but I will have that for you by the time we are ready to go. So just keep that in mind. If you're interested in those tickets, it's a great day. It's a beautiful park here at Sovereign Bank Stadium. Take advantage of it, especially if you've never been out to the stadium in the past. I'd also at this time like to recognize the elected officials, some of our committee members, our notable attendees here today at the stadium. Some of them we've mentioned already. County Commissioner Doug Hoke is with us. Mayor Bracy is with us. York City Council President Carol Hill Evans. York City Councilman Henry Nixon. Councilman David Satterley. York Haven Borough Councilman Edmund Miller. Are there any other elected officials that maybe we missed this morning? You want to raise your hand if we missed anyone? Okay, good. Thanks to Brandon for doing a good job with that list. We'd also like to recognize the Democratic Party of York County Executive Committee, beginning with our chairperson, Bob Kiefhofer. Our Vice Chair, Ruth Ann Schaefer. Secretary, Barbara Bolt. Treasurer, Corlin Graves. State Committee Member, Bill Branch. State Committee Member, Brandon Berg, who I saw him come in a minute ago. He's out there somewhere. Like I said, he's a whirling dervish here this morning. And Regional Field Organizer, Suzanne Gates. I also want to recognize a few of our notable attendees here this morning. First and foremost, Judge Joe Waters. We appreciate him coming out this morning. Maybe. I think maybe he gets the award for the longest trip this morning, but I don't know. We might have to cede that to the governor when he gets here. I'm not sure. John Hanger, former DEP secretary and candidate for governor. Former Revenue Secretary Tom Wolf. Harrisburg Councilman and Lieutenant Governor candidate Brad Kaplinski. Our 95th Legislative District Special Election candidate Kevin Schreiber. And as I said, this is a beautiful stadium. This is the second year we've had the opportunity to take advantage of this stadium, take advantage of this venue. I think everyone agrees that it serves a wonderful purpose for the city, not just in an entertainment purpose of baseball, but just in this room as well. That we can do community events. There's a lot of different activities that go on here at the stadium that maybe didn't occur here in the city prior to the stadium being here. We owe a huge debt of thanks to former Mayor Charlie Robertson for bringing this stadium to York City. And I'd like to recognize him this morning. My apologies. Bob and I are changing things up as we go. So he's giving me signs like a coach, and I have no idea what's going on. So at this point in time, we'd like to give our special election candidate, Kevin Schreiber, the opportunity to come up, introduce himself, talk a little bit about his campaign, and let you know a little bit about what's been going on the last few months and what's going to be happening here in the next few months. So thank you.
Chad is doing an excellent job for 9:30 on a Saturday morning. Let's give him a round of applause. Doing fine. Good morning, all, and welcome to Sovereign Bank Stadium. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And the mic just cut off, so I'm going to go without the microphone. Look at it. He's got a backup. He's got a backup. This Democratic Party thinks of everything. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys this morning. And for those that may not know me, my name is Kevin Schreiber. And for those whom I've not had the pleasure to meet, nice to meet you. And for those that I have met, it's great to see you again. As Bob and Chad have mentioned, I am the candidate for the 95th District. And for those that aren't aware, that is Auditor General Eugene DePasquale's former seat. And I have worked for the City of York for the past 7 years. I am currently our Community and Economic Development Director. I'm originally from Chester County, just to give you a little bit of background on myself. I'm a Chester County native that came to York via York College. I'm one of those individuals that have stayed in York after York College. And I married a York native, so I'm told I'm not going anywhere. So I'm here for the long haul. I've spent over a third of my life in York, so I consider myself a Yorker, although I'm told I'm not yet. So we'll work on that, and with years to come, maybe I'll be blessed as being called a true Yorker. So I graduated from York College. I took a job working for the City of York under former Mayor John Brenner and have been fortunate to continue serving the citizens of York under Mayor Bracey. And I work on a daily basis to improve the quality of life for our community. And in economic and community development, that spans the Central Business District, that spans neighborhoods, and as everyone knows, we have a city of 43,000 and 5.2 square miles, and we have a lot of very good things going on in our city. We've got a lot of great accomplishments over this past decade in York, and we have a lot more to do. But we all know that we still have challenges ahead of us, and as I have worked tirelessly on behalf of our community for these past 7 years, I've been a witness firsthand to some of these challenges that we still face. And representing the citizens of York in community and economic development doesn't just limit ourselves to the communities within our city. We work to improve the quality of life for our citizens, the quality of place for our neighborhoods. We work to set the conditions for businesses to thrive, for entrepreneurials to want to come to York, and for those merchants and successful businesses that want to stay in York. We help to increase tourism and recreation and make our city a great place to live, work, and play. But we know it's not limited to the city, and most of us in the room know that community and economic development is not limited to municipal boundaries. It spans beyond the city, and community and economic development benefits our entire county because we as Democrats all know that to have a healthy and thriving York County that is competitive in the 21st century, it all begins with a healthy and thriving York City. So as I have worked tirelessly on behalf of our city for these past 7 years to improve our community, it's to improve York County and to make York County a great place that will attract and retain young people. And it's a great place for families to live and to educate. And it's for businesses that want to come here or those that want to remain, thrive, and grow. So I've been a witness firsthand to the great success and opportunities that our community has, but a witness also to the challenges that we yet face. And we have challenges before us. This campaign will not be easy. We're hearing a lot that this is Representative DePasquale's old seat. It's in the bag, but we know it's not. And it's all going to come down to turnout. And like it or not, the Republicans have put forth certainly a viable candidate. And we all know the candidate. He's known in the community. So what we have to do is work to turn out the votes. And what a very astute, smarter man than I, Secretary Wolf, said is this may not come down to personalities. This is not going to be a popularity contest. It's going to come down to simple policy differences. And the fact is that we as Democrats all know that the Republican Party in Harrisburg will not, at least in the foreseeable future, until they become the party of Lincoln again, represent and stand for the citizens and the constituents of the 95th District. It's the Democratic Party in Pennsylvania that will do so, and that will continue to do so, and that's why we need a Democrat representing this seat in Harrisburg. So for all of you that may not live in the district, but are here today, I will respectfully ask for your support. And for all of those that live in the district, I'll ask for your vote on May 21st. And this is a special election. It will be held in tandem to the May municipal primary. So we have a little bit of education to do. We have to inform our populace, and we have to make sure that they turn out to the polls. I'm confident in the team that we have to date. I'm ready to go. I've got a wife that is very supportive. Fortunately, she could not be here. She's working at her coffee shop, shameless plug, Green Bean Roasting Company, 100 South Beaver, intersection of King and Beaver Street. Delicious coffee. So, my wife would like to be here, but she's working. So she runs a small business. We live in Newton Square, and we've got a little puppy, and hopefully that'll continue to fulfill her maternal instinct for a few more years. So happy to be with you. Happy to meet everyone. Very excited to work on behalf of all of the representatives, the citizens of the 95th District, and happy to continue the good work and the opportunities and the success of York City, of West Manchester Township, of West York Borough, of North York Borough, and Spring Garden Township. And hopefully, come May 22nd, I'll be ready to represent this entire state of Pennsylvania in the 95th District. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kevin. We appreciate you coming out this morning and to continue to shamelessly plug your wife's business. She's part of York Restaurant Week, which is restaurantweekyork.com, I believe. So it ends today, so go take advantage of some of the specials. Start at Kevin's wife's business and then head on out to some of the other restaurants as well.
Tip generously.
Yes. Yes, yeah, when you tip generously, a portion of that's going to Kevin's campaign. Thank you, Kevin, we appreciate it. And as Kevin said, this is a special election that's going to be coming up in May. We know that primaries don't always turn out large numbers. We need to turn out large numbers this May for Kevin. It's important that we get him elected into that seat so we can continue to have a Democrat representing York County in the State House. It's been vitally important the last few years. We know what Eugene has done in the State House. As the only Democratic representative from York County, we would like to continue to have at least one one representative, and we're going to work hard next year to make sure that we got a lot more than just Kevin up there in Harrisburg. So we definitely, if you can help, contact Kevin's campaign, contact the party, and we'll be happy to put you in touch with how you can volunteer and help out Kevin's campaign coming up here in May.
Eugene's not the only one.
Oh, well, State House.
Okay.
Bob corrected me. Rob Teplitz is in the state senate. So we got one in each chamber now. We're proud of it. And we're gonna keep working towards getting more than that in both chambers. Thanks, Bob. Thanks for correcting me. And thank you for recognizing that I'm doing okay for 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Okay. We're stalling for Eugene. I'm going to throw him under the bus right now. You know what? This man has worked hard. He has all of our support. He can take it. He's taken a lot harder punches than this. So Eugene's going to be coming up here in a few minutes. But at this time, I'm going to welcome to the podium Chairman Bob Kiefhofer. 2 years ago at our inaugural State of the County Committee breakfast, I had the honor of introducing the chairman as one of the top 12 county chairs in Pennsylvania. Just a few weeks ago, Politics PA released their second ranking of county chairs. For the second consecutive time, Chairman Kiefhofer was again named to the list. He was one of only a few chairs who made the list a second time. This is a true testament to his tireless work for the party here in York, as well as for the party as a whole. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Chairman Kiefhofer for the State of the County Committee address.
Chad and I are great personal friends, and I never miss a chance to correct you publicly. we worked really hard to get State Senator Teplitz that seat, and I just want to make sure that we all acknowledge that, because I've been giving the newspapers a lot of grief over the last couple of years. Every time they run an article, they always had the qualifier in there, State Representative Eugene DePasquale, the only Democrat from York County in the General Assembly. Well, they can't do that anymore, and we're not going to allow them to do that anymore. Thank you, Director Baker, for that nice introduction. If I knew you were going to say those nice things about me, I'd have gone easier on you in the correction. Distinguished guests, officers, and members of the Democratic Party of York County, friends. It is again an honor to stand before you to deliver these remarks on the state of your Democratic County Committee, and to share something of the opportunities and the challenges that we're going to face here in 2013 and beyond. Let's begin by briefly looking at where we are as a party and where we've come from in order to better understand where we are right now and where we're going, hopefully, over the next several years. From 2002 to 2008, Democratic candidates running for statewide office won a very impressive 70% of those races, 14 of 20. In 2009, 10, and 11, our statewide candidates won a combined 2 of 11, or only 18% of the statewide races. Now that dramatic swing in the win-loss percentage was due to a number of factors, including a certain form of complacency and inactivity that set in among Democratic voters and volunteers and donors. All this happened just as the teabagger movement was taking off. Then on November 6, 2012, we went 5 for 5, winning every statewide race for the first time in history. And that was because of you. Congratulations. We, of course, re-elected President Obama, Senator Casey, and Treasurer McCord, and as Chad noted earlier, we elected for the first time ever the first Democratic candidate, the first woman in Kathleen Kane, to the Attorney General's office, and our own Eugene DePasquale to the Auditor General's office. So how do we manage to turn things around in such a big way? Well, for starters, we had an incredible slate of candidates, the best slate of candidates we've had in more years than any of us can remember. But more than anything else, beyond the strength of our slate, the Pennsylvania Democratic Party had the resources necessary to win. Our state committee had the people and the money both in order to carry us to victory statewide. The state committee had their largest staff of paid professionals ever, 3 times the size, triple the size of the staff they had in 2008. These staffers coordinated closely with our statewide campaigns and coordinated also with the county committees in a way that we had never seen before. The state committee team expanded on the use and functionality of Vote Builder, or VAN, the Democratic Party's voter database, thus empowering volunteers and campaigns in ways that we couldn't have imagined even just 2 or 3 years ago with this powerful tool. With their expanded staff, State Committee was able to blanket media outlets statewide with news releases and regularly engage surrogate speakers within local media markets, including myself, Mayor Bracey, Commissioner Hoke, and others. They created countless events across the state to push back on the radical agenda of Mitt Romney, Tom Corbett, and the Republican legislators in both Harrisburg and Washington. Now, all of these tools and all of these different initiatives, and there's so many more that we could mention and just don't simply have the time for. All of these things were made possible by record-setting fundraising last year. The Pennsylvania Democratic Party raised more money last year than in the previous 5 years combined. The state committee is guided by the same vision that the county committee independently embraced about 2 years ago. We too have put in place and are executing a plan to increase our fundraising and to use that fundraising to, in part, to hire full-time paid professionals to work to assist our candidates and coordinate with our volunteer base. During that time, your Democratic County Committee has created a new relationship with local media outlets. Take a look around this room this morning, if you will. That has resulted in an incalculable number of positive news coverage, news stories, covering both Democratic values and our position on an untold number of issues over the last couple of years. And I'd like to offer a special thank you right now to our Director of Communications and Marketing, Chad. Chad, we're up here. I think this is kind of like that famous incident with an actress at the Oscars the other year when she won the award, was in the restroom. During... in 2011, we elected 73.4% of the Democratic candidates on the ballot here in York County. Last year, as has been noted several times already, we elected State Senator Teplitz to a seat not held by a Democratic legislator in 76 years. What's more, Sarah Speed returned the highest vote performance of any Democratic State House candidate outside of the 95th District in more years than any of us wants to think back on. And if Sarah was here with us this morning, by the way, she sent her regrets, I would again remind her of those words from former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. You may have to fight a battle more than once to win. Also in 2012, our volunteers at the Democratic Party of York County made more phone calls than any other county committee to voters who were listed by PennDOT as possibly not having the proper photo ID. This was just one key of our broad effort to protect all voters, all registered voters, to make sure that they enjoy the franchise. The Democratic Party of York County continues to transform our own fundraising program from a model that previously had relied on a handful of large dollar donors who provided more than 50% of our funding into a much more sustainable model that will yield much higher totals year after year after year. This new program seeks to build a much broader base of donors, each contributing far smaller amounts than was previously sought, in addition to those large dollar contributors. In the last 2 years, we've created a list of committed donors that's more than 900% larger than the list we began with in 2010. And while we're delighted with that success, we recognize it's still a fraction of our goal. That point illustrates both how narrow our fundraising base has been over the last 2+ decades, as well as how inadequate our annual budget has been. The goals we've established, once realized, will provide a steady stream of funding to cover all operational expenses, to hire a minimum of 3 full-time professionals, and to fund multiple direct contacts with tens of thousands of targeted voters on behalf of our candidates. That's the key to winning. Our efforts here in York County have been recognized time and again across the Commonwealth by elected officials and candidates, the state committee, other county chairs, and professional political consultants and the media. Our candidate and volunteer training program has been called unrivaled in the state, as is the level and support of the services we offer our candidates, things including assistance with developing their message, research on their opposition, creating effective scripts for our volunteers to use when they speak to voters on the doorstep or on the telephone. And we have one of the things I'm most proud of is we have really, really good campaign literature design services. We've got some very talented people working with us out of Democratic headquarters here. And we also do something that most other counties are not able to do in the same way, I'm proud to say, and this reflects the skills of and the quality of the people that we have volunteering for us. Workshops that help our candidates prepare for debates and editorial board meetings, and that has made a huge, huge difference. You've seen in the last couple of years Democratic candidates receiving endorsements from our local newspapers that outside of Eugene or maybe Steve Stetler before that had just never happened before. The person arguably recognized in Pennsylvania as the top campaign consultant in Pennsylvania said that we use election data more effectively than any other county in the state. The most respected, by far, the most respected county chair in the state from either party is Marcel Gren in Montgomery County. And he recently referred to us as the rising star, while others have compared us to his own county committee. And while they are perhaps a dozen years ahead of us in this restructuring process, know this, the Montgomery County Democratic Committee turned that county blue in 2008 for the first time since before the Civil War. And in 2011, they elected 2 Democratic county commissioners for the first time ever. So you see, huge turnarounds are possible. The Democratic Party of York County is on a trajectory not unlike that State Committee or the Montgomery County Democratic Committee. And while we plotted a parallel course to them, we have a set of unique challenges all our own. First off, in the central third of the state, we measure success for statewide candidates differently than they do in Philadelphia or Allegheny counties. We do not need, nor do any of our statewide candidates expect us to deliver 50% plus 1 of the votes in order for our efforts to be considered successful on their behalf. A Democratic candidate running for statewide office doesn't expect to win more than 12 or maybe 15 of the 67 counties. And as an example, just this past November, President Obama won the state with 52% of the vote, about a 5.5% margin above Governor Romney. But he did it carrying only 13 of the 67 counties, meaning he lost 54 counties, yet won the state. Now, we know from press reports that were published last fall that York County was one of 8 that Governor Romney had to win in order to carry Pennsylvania. But he didn't just need to win York County, he needed to win York County in a very big way. He had to win with at least 68% of the vote. We successfully did our job by holding Mitt Romney to less than 60% of the vote total. Our efforts here in York County helped Romney fall more than 8% short of his local goal, thereby preventing him from winning Pennsylvania. In fact, York County delivered enough Democratic votes to help all of our statewide candidates. So again, we don't need to deliver 50% plus 1 of the votes for our efforts to be considered successful by our own candidates. But that's likely to change. This coming change is what we're actually preparing for. We are working toward making York County a 50% plus 1 county. In the southwest corner of Pennsylvania, their percentage of overall support for Democratic candidates is on a slowly declining glide path. While here in the south central region of the state, we're on a slowly ascending glide path in terms of that same overall support. And we're poised to jump dramatically over the next 10 to 15 years with this. In order for that to happen, though, We must actively stoke the fires of Democratic support here within York County. We must be the ones to fan those flames. Now, looking at our immediate future, looking at 2013, our number one job is to not allow that same sort of complacency to set in after last November's historic wins that we saw after those huge historic victories that we enjoyed in 2008. As you've already heard from Kevin, on May 21st of this year, there's going to be a primary. On primary day, there's going to be a special election, excuse me. There will be a primary that day as well. There'll be a special election for that state house district. This is going to be a really hard-fought battle. Kevin spoke briefly about this already. This is going to be a really hard-fought battle. We do enjoy a significant voter registration edge in the district. However, that means nothing if Democratic voters and supporters don't turn out to vote. And that's not always been the case in these municipal primaries, or special elections. It's not a gimme for us. But fortunately, we do have an outstanding candidate in Kevin Schreiber. He's hardworking, he's dedicated, he's professional, he's knowledgeable. I want to tell you clearly right now, he is undoubtedly the most qualified candidate for this job. It's an 80-day sprint, 80 days. An 80-day sprint from today to primary day. And the Democratic Party of York County is putting significant resources and immense efforts to ensure that Kevin does win. Additionally, we have municipal races on the ballot this year. These municipal races are in some ways more important to our day-to-day lives than electing a congressman or a U.S. senator or even a president. Now, of course, Red Line Borough Council's not going to declare war on Dallastown and invade. Dillsburg's not launching a Mars probe to look for life on another planet or anything like that. Those are things that obviously they're better suited to nations, not municipalities. But these local officials that we will elect this year do have an immediate and direct impact on everyday living. They deal with quality of life issues. Police and fire protection, road maintenance, snow removal, parks and recreation. They oversee contracts on things that we mostly just take for granted. Trash collection, water, sewer. They decide which books our kids read in school. Anybody remember the intelligent design debacle in Dover from a few years ago? These local elected officials will set our property tax rates and they'll establish the economic tone and that balance within our communities. Now, municipal elections are critical in another way as well. They're critical to our party's future, therefore our state and our nation's future, in that the people that we elect to a school board or a borough council seat or that becomes a township supervisor, they are our farm team for future higher office a few years down the road. In the last municipal election, as I said, 2011, 73.4% of the Democratic candidates on the ballot that year won. There are Democrats holding elected office in areas that many of you might not think is even possible. Dallastown, Delta, Dover, Railroad Borough, Red Line. We hold majorities in some otherwise red areas of the county. Fawn Grove, West Manheim Township, Jefferson, Lewisberry, Spring Garden, Spring Grove, areas all across the county. Our Democratic candidates can win and can compete in every precinct in York County if we help them gather the resources they need to win. If we train them, and their volunteers. If we continue to promote democratic values and ideals. If we continue to add to the nearly 102,000 registered Democrats currently living in York County. Does that number surprise anybody? 102,000 registered Democrats in York County. I hear from folks all the time say, oh, I'm the only Democrat in Wrightsville, Bob. I'm the only Democrat in Hanover. No, you're not. The more seats that we win this year, the more Democratic voters will turn out next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. We can create an upward spiral of Democratic victories. We can do this, folks. We can. In the words of Henry Ford, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. A friend of mine, one of my mentors in life, recently posted this to his Facebook page. Sometimes I want to ask God why he allows poverty, famine, and injustice in the world when he could do something about it. But I'm afraid he just might ask me the same question. I completely understand that fear of not wanting to ask that question for fear of being asked the same, but I want to tell you, I no longer hold that fear myself. The mission statement of the Democratic Party of York County is this: elect quality Democrats to promote the values of the Democratic Party, to improve the quality of life for all York County residents. To improve the quality of life for all York County residents. Now, that may seem admittedly a lofty goal, and indeed for it is. But this is not a charge given to an individual. This is the mission of the Democratic Party of York County. And the Democratic Party is all of us. You're the Democratic Party, and you're the Democratic Party, and you're the Democratic Party, and so am I. It's every one of us. Improve the quality of life for all York County residents. Now, what precisely is our mission statement tasking us with? If we unite, if we each contribute a little bit of our time, our energy, our finances, even in the smallest amounts, a few hours a week or a few quarters, nickels, and dimes a day, totaling 5, 10, 20, 25 bucks a month. If we all do that, then together we will marshal the resources necessary to fulfill the mission of electing quality Democrats to improve the quality of life for all York County Democrats. Or for all York County residents. Electing quality Democrats is a means to an end. More Democrats holding elected office means more votes for legislation that invests in our future by providing every child a quality education that gives them the opportunity to reach their full potential. Electing more Democratic candidates means we'll have more elected officials fighting to protect the quality of our water and the air we breathe. It means more people working to strengthen Social Security, not tear it down. It means more people working to preserve Medicare and to expand Medicaid for our most vulnerable neighbors. Electing quality Democratic candidates means more folks supporting budgets that create jobs, to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, to improve public safety, to promote investment in green technologies. Because we believe in science, and we know that the science says global warming is real, and the time to act is now. This is how each of our contributions improves the quality of life for all York County residents. And that's why we need not fear being asked whether what we're doing about poverty, famine, and injustice in the world. We fight these things together by pooling our resources needed to win elections up and down the entire ballot. We are the Democratic Party of York County, every one of us, and together as the Democratic Party of York County, we're making real progress and we're going to continue to win. Thank you very much.
You know, a few seconds ago there when Bob was saying, you're the Democratic Party, you're the Democratic Party, I was waiting for a Howard Dean, yeah! After that, so thanks for sparing us that this morning, Bob. I'd like to welcome to the podium at this time former Pennsylvania Revenue Secretary, Mr. Tom Wolf. Tom is here this morning to make a special announcement. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I misread that note. He's actually here this morning to make a special introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Tom Wolf.
Thank you very much, Chad, I think. Before I start, I would like to actually point out something, because I've heard some rumors just sort of mingling this morning. I'd just like to say it's not true that Kevin Schreiber is trying to copy my hairstyle. But I actually would like to make an announcement this morning before I do what I'm supposed to do, and that is, I heard earlier this morning that, and this is definitive, Carl Nelson is definitely not running for governor. Just one other thing. I think Bob Kefauver just gave a great state of the party, and I think he is owed a great debt of gratitude by all of us. He mentioned Marcel Groen of Montgomery County, and Montgomery County has indeed done some remarkable things in terms of transforming itself from a Republican to a Democratic county. But I think Bob is doing the same thing here. I grew up in York County. I grew up in Mount Wolf. Now, there are a couple of Mount Wolfers here. Yeah. All right. Yeah. When I grew up, it wasn't actually a crime to be a Democrat, but it wasn't something you talked about in public. But look at this room, and you know, places like Mount Wolf, like Wrightsville. You know, it's not that there are actually a few Democrats there; it's that we're proud to be Democrats. This is where we want to be as York County, and I think Bob Kefauver deserves a lot of credit for getting us to that point. So thank you very much, Bob. I know he's not in the room yet, but I saw him pass by out here, and I'd just like to make say something nice about Governor Rendell. It was my privilege to work under him, and also John Hanger's privilege to work under Ed Rendell. By the way, John Hanger's here, one of the finest people in Pennsylvania. I'd just like to. I think John would say the same thing. We were both very privileged to be able to work for Ed Rendell. He was a great boss, I think a great governor, and we're really pleased to have him here today in York County. So let me finally get to what I'm supposed to do here, and that is introduce the next speaker. A lot of people have talked about Eugene DePasquale. Now, you know, York County, it's DePasquale.
It changes
the phrase. That's right. You notice there's a real divide in Pennsylvania. To the east of Franklin County, it's Hughes, and to the west, it's Ewens. No, that's serious anthropological work here. But the same thing with Eugene's name. To the east of Franklin County is DePasquale. To the west is DePasquale, because your grandfather was president of City Council in Pittsburgh. So I'm going to call him Eugene DePasquale, and I don't care what the rest of it is. He is the first person to win statewide office from York County in 58 years, since George Leader was elected governor. That's right, and that's a tribute to two things. First thing is that the Democratic Party is the kind of party that can do the kind of organization work that gets a person like Eugene elected. But the second thing, and more important, is that Eugene is the kind of candidate who deserves to be a statewide office holder. Mm-hmm. He's from York County, he represented York County, and we're really proud that you're representing us in a statewide office. But Eugene really worked his way up through the ranks. He was county chair. He was economic development director for the city of York under John Brenner, then became representative in the 95th district, and now, of course, is Auditor General. We are so proud to have you here, so proud to have you represent us in all those different ways. And I want to tell you one other thing that you probably don't know about Eugene. He was actually a really good baseball player. Threw a mean curveball, and I think we're going to be proud of him as Auditor General and things he's going to do for us and for Pennsylvania. So please welcome Eugene.
Tom brought up the baseball, and as I walked in, and any time I have this situation with Tom, there's this enormous guilt. See, I walked in with my basketball coaching outfit today, and that Tom gets very concerned when Ben isn't focused on baseball. And when he found out one time he was playing soccer, we had some issues with that. But as long as, but Tom is always more comfortable. He knows it's always about improving his baseball skills. That's always what we come back to. So this is about speed, agility. Baseball starts in 2 weeks. And so, yeah, if you're seeing me, I am out of uniform today. Ben I'm the coach of the team. It's county quarterfinals. Although I will tell you, even though they haven't lost in a month and a half, this may be the end of the road today as they play the 1 seed York. And I sort of told my wife what I thought was going to happen. She goes, just leave that out of the pregame talk, because they may be a little bit overmatched today, but they've done well. So that's why I'm out of uniform today. First of all, Tom, thank you for that very warm introduction. See the governor here, so always put pressure on when Governor Rendell's standing in the hall. Yeah. I mean, because whatever I'm going to say, it's not going to be nearly as interesting as Governor Rendell. I do appreciate John Hanger being here as well, Mayor Bracy, Kevin. I want to say real quick on Kevin that I could not think of anyone, and I know we've got 80 days of work ahead of us, but I could not think of anyone who I would want more to fill the 95 district seat. And I never say it's my seat because it's not my seat. That type of stuff always drives me crazy, and I get a little antsy about that because it's not my seat. It's the voters and the constituents of the 95th district, just like it is on all the districts. But I could not think of anyone who would be better to take my place in the 95th district than Kevin. And so, Kevin, we've got 80 days of hard work. I know what that's like. When I became the nominee, it was 90 days of hard work, but a lot of shoe leather. But let's go out and make sure that this happens so we get Kevin into the State House. I want to, 2 quick thank yous, and then I want to just give you a little bit of update what I'm up to, and then move on from there. First of all, Bob Kiefhofer, I want to say a special thank you. Echo pretty much what everyone else here has either said or is thinking. It is one thing to compare us to Montgomery County, but there is a difference there, and anyone that's been involved in statewide politics knows this, is that there are more financial resources in Montgomery County. So not only is Bob making these great strides, but doing it without sometimes the big checks that come there, because you do have a lot of Philadelphia workers that live in Montgomery County. So that is, I think, helped them in the initial stages was, even though they maybe didn't have a lot of registered Democrats as a percentage, but there were significantly more financial resources. I mean, some of your wealthier Democrats in the nation. I mean, Mike Gerber's former state house district, now represented by Mary Jo Daley, is always the top zip code for giving to Democrats nationally, other than, I think, Hollywood zip code. I'm not saying, I mean, it's kind of funny, but I'm saying that to make a point. That is, we're never in that category. And most central Pennsylvania counties aren't. But that means that we're doing this literally without that same type of financial resource, which means you have to out-organize, have to out-data them, and outwork them. So Bob, thank you for everything you've done to get us back in the ball game here. Yeah. I also want to thank everybody in this room. The trivia question is, and everyone in this room will probably at least know one of the two, but name the 2 counties that, if you start at the Pittsburgh Media Market and go east. 2 counties that I did a percentage-wise better than President Obama. Now, the Pittsburgh Media Market, there was a lot of them. But name the 2 counties. Now, everyone here would know one of them, which is York. Name the other one. Not Montgomery, no. No, not Chester. No, it's sort of so bizarre you would never guess it. That's Lycoming County, and the reason why, and Rick Mirabito, who's the one Democrat from Lycoming County now, what's his last name? Mirabito. I said, Rick, how in God's name did I do that in Lycoming County? He goes, what's my last name? And I said, oh. So sometimes it may not be your message. Sometimes people go in and say, oh, well, I see, Pennsylvania Dutch name and Italian name. I'll vote for the Italian name. But Lycoming County and York, when you started Cambria County, that was this sort of area where I did dramatically better than the president moving west. You started Cambria County, move east, it's Lycoming and York. But I know the reason why in York, and it's not because of my Italian last name, it's because of all the work that everyone here did to help me get there. So thank you very much. I want to give 3 quick things and then turn it over to, I think somebody else is introducing the governor. But 3 quick things. One is, I promised everyone on day 1, when I say everyone, I mean everyone, that on day 1 I would begin the audit of the water protection programs of the Department of Environmental Protection. 2 hours after my swearing in, that letter was sent electronically. That audit is underway, and we're going to find out if there are any gaps in our water quality programs in Pennsylvania. The people of this state have a right to know, with all the drilling that's going on, that our water is being protected, and that audit is underway. Second thing, and these are sometimes the issues you don't always prepare for, but the Department of Public Welfare now, I thankfully, under the leadership of Beth Mackworth, I was very concerned about the previous secretary. But the previous secretary had a contract for what is known as PPL contract, but it's really not the utility. It was this personal care provider for people that provided services to disabled adults. And it was a private contract, and it turned out that they so mismanaged the contract that the workers weren't getting paid. So, not to make this sound anything other than what actually happened, people that are doing that type of work don't make a lot of money. They're doing the Lord's work every day. And they weren't getting paid, but because they thought they were getting direct deposit pay, they were going out and still living their life. And when they didn't get paid, their credit rating now getting hurt. Some of them have been kicked out of their apartments. You go all the way down the line. That was an audit that was an issue that I had not anticipated in the campaign. I'm not sure what the political ramifications are. I don't care. We need to find out why the people that are the most vulnerable didn't get the care they needed. We need to find out why the people that were providing that care didn't get the paycheck they deserved. That audit began last week. And I also want to say this, because I wouldn't have said this about the previous secretary. I have full confidence that after this audit's done, Secretary Mackworth and I will have a game plan to fix the problem moving forward, because one of the things people are most frustrated about, especially down in Washington, is that everyone's drawing too many lines in the sand. We got to quit worrying about that. We got to fix problems. And this is one that I'm confident Secretary Mackworth and I will find a solution and fix it. Finally, and while this is a huge issue, it's symbolic of what is happening, I think, with the governor, the current governor, not the former one, and why I'm hopeful that there'll be a remedy for that in 2014. The Medicaid expansion issue. Now, when you're to the right of Governor Kasich and Governor Scott, and you're the governor of Pennsylvania, I think it's time to look in the mirror. This Medicaid expansion, refusing to opt in to the Affordable Care Act on Medicaid expansion, it makes wrong moral sense, wrong healthcare sense, and it is wrong financially. Let me give you an example. Number one, morally, the reality is that 700,000 Pennsylvanians would be added to the healthcare roll, and there's a moral part of that. Number two, healthcare-wise, it's just better, the more people that we get healthcare coverage, the just better off our society will be. But three, that invest from the federal government, $0 paid for by state taxpayers. But this is the part that always drives me crazy when people say, well, we're not paying for this. Yes, we are. So if we don't opt in, we're funding Idaho, Florida, Ohio, and getting $0 back for that. See, we're a nation here, and so this is a national healthcare law now, and us being one of the few states that don't opt in, if that happens, that means that we are not only not getting the benefit for our own citizens, we're not only getting those dollars back here, driving job creation back here in the healthcare industry, which, by the way, is a huge job creator, but also we're helping fund this all over the country. Now, whether you are for Governor Corbett or not, come on, work with me here, come on. It is this type of ideologically blind decision-making that I know, just from having traveled all over the state, that people of every party persuasion are frustrated. It's why the growing frustration with DC, the idea of this sequester thing, they can't sit down and negotiate a deal. People are very frustrated by that, and all I can tell you this is that sometimes people make one decision and it can be self-correcting a little bit later, and the people have tried this experiment, pledging allegiance to Grover Norquist. My hope is in 2014 that pledge is revoked and we put the pledge back to where it belongs to the people of this state. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Eugene. I think it's everyone's honor this morning to be able to bring Eugene here for the first time, I think, to a Democratic event as the official Auditor General of Pennsylvania. So, we appreciate you taking time to schedule this morning. Give me 1 second here. Okay. When we were planning the order of our speakers this morning, no one seemed to want to follow our special guest. I don't know why. I asked Chairman Kiefhofer, I said, do you want to do your State of the County address after our special guest? And he laughed and laughed and laughed. And he told me, he said, no. No one should follow our special guest because no one can follow our special guest. At this time, I'd like you to join me in welcoming Mayor of York City, the Honorable Kim Bracey, to introduce that special guest for us this morning.
Good morning, everyone. Come on, York. Good morning, York. Thank you all. It is a treat to be here today, surrounded by my friendly fellow Democrats, to celebrate a successful past year in our York County. And the individual I'm about to introduce certainly needs no introduction, but I'm going to give it. When I first met Governor Ed Rendell, I was our city's community development director, and our city was making a pitch to the governor and his action team for Elm Street funding. Well, we were named by our governor as Pennsylvania's first Elm Street designated community. This signature Rendell program targeted Pennsylvania investment into city neighborhoods. York's Old Town East was a first in Pennsylvania of what became a very successful program that has since been replicated by other states. It was a program that reaffirmed this governor's commitment to Pennsylvania cities, a passion forged as district attorney and then mayor of our great city of Philadelphia. And to report to our governor, our Elm Street neighborhood has continued to be an area of strategic concern and investment by our cities there, and continues to improve, none of which would have been possible without your early and unwavering support. Thank you, Governor. In fact, there's a couple residents from that area here today as well, too. In fact, this governor is no stranger to York at all. I would go as far as to qualify him as a big fan of York. And on behalf of York, as our mayor, I would like to personally and publicly thank you. This governor repeatedly stuck his neck out and exhausted political capital to support our city, its citizens, and other cities throughout Pennsylvania. Here we sit this morning and possibly his crowning achievement in York, Sovereign Bank Stadium, which absolutely could not have been possible without your support and is achieving the success we predicted. Governor, 70 home games per year, averaging 41 per game, over 300,000 fans per year attending, and that's just for baseball. And I didn't mention to you, they are 2 times Atlantic League champions as well. Frankly, I wish I could walk everyone up to the roof of this building now and show you a panoramic view of Governor Rendell's tour of accomplishment in York, starting with the Greenway Tech Center at the Crispus Attucks, the Crispus Attucks Early Learning Center, the YMCA Graham Aquatic Center, the Northwest Triangle, to include development directly across the street at the Somerville Building, Codo 241, Codo 28, York College's North Campus expansion, new streetscaping throughout the city, the already mentioned success and progress in Old Town East, new housing in our Salem Square neighborhood, and renovations at Central Market, Farmers Market, and the new Market View Arts Center. And that's not an exhaustive list by far, folks, but you get my point. And it has truly been my honor to work alongside this governor to rebuild our city and lead York's comeback. In fact, I recently heard a noteworthy York County Republican say how awful it would be to go back to the Rendell years, friends. I'm here to say I would gladly, without equivocation, go back to the Rendell years. I was this close to asking that Republican, what the heck has Corbett done so magically? But I didn't go that far. This governor has spent his career improving Pennsylvania, and York, Pennsylvania is far better off for having him serve as our governor. And if I had a nickel for every time I said, man, I wish I would have had four full years with him, it would be much easier to balance our city's budget. On behalf of York, as our mayor, Governor Ed Rendell, I graciously welcome you to today, and I welcome you to Sovereign Bank Stadium, the house you helped build. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Governor Rendell.
Thank you all very, very much. It's great to be here, and I do a lot of speaking dinners, mostly state dinners throughout the country, and over the course of time I've spoken at a lot of venues, but this is a great venue to speak at. I don't know if you haven't been up here, I know Gene and Kim of course have. From here, you're looking out over center field, and it's so compact, it almost looks like you can hit one out yourself. Obviously misleading, but well, it's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Kim for that nice introduction. I was impressed with Kim when I met her as Economic Development Director for York, and I had a great time working first with Mayor Brenner and then with Kim, and of course with Gene as State Representative in developing York and doing all the things that Kim said. Kim is, I think the point she made is that there's very good government spending. When government invests in things that are important for the quality of people's lives, when it invests in things that spawn economic growth and economic development, that's good government spending. That's investment, and we've got to keep doing it. We can't back away from the fact that government investment, if it's well targeted and well implemented, can be an enormous factor in changing outcomes for people. And Kim, you gave a great talk. I've always been impressed with Kim, except for one day. And that was her inauguration. I was a city governor, and Kim invited me to her inauguration, and because I cared for her and cared for York, I wanted to come down. And it was obviously, like most inaugurations, in January. And I got there and I said, got to City Hall, I said, is there a room big enough for this? And they said, oh no, Governor, it's outside. Now, I hardly ever wear a coat for the simple reason that, you know, I was driven most places, so I didn't really need a coat. So I didn't have a coat. And it was 19 degrees. It was absolutely freezing. And I'm standing there and I'm thinking, maybe I should have reconsidered. Is Kim crazy? It may have been the coldest inauguration. I don't know if you old timers will remember, but JFK's inauguration, it had snowed in Washington and the snow was gone, but it was freezing that day. So Kim, thanks for all you've done. And I am going to have the good fortune to speak at the fundraiser for Kevin and Kim in a little bit. So I appreciate that. I was listening to Gene speak, and it reminded me of a story when Gene talked about getting votes because of his last name. When I was district attorney in Philadelphia, there was a wonderful Japanese-American lawyer who decided he wanted to run for judge. And we all wanted to help him because he'd never been in politics, but he was a high-quality guy. We wanted to help him, and we got together, and we did. And his name was William Moritani. And he had this lovely poster made up with his picture on it. And a couple of us got up together and said, Judge, you've got a lot of volunteers. We can't put this poster up in South Philadelphia. And he was taken aback. He said, why not? Well, South Philadelphia is where 90% of the Italians live in Philadelphia. And in fact, they're 85% of all of the 5 big wards in South Philadelphia. I said, let's just put up Maritani for Judge posters. And I think we're going to do very, very well. Well, Judge Maritani, out of 28 candidates, there were 10 to be elected, out of 28 candidates, came in first in 4 out of the 5 wards in South Philly, and second in one of those wards. So ethnic voting is a tradition in Pennsylvania, and for that matter, in other parts of the country as well. I did also want to comment, I know Gene's doing the audit, but I had the wonderful experience of running into someone from one of the shale companies. And I said to him, I said, how are you guys doing complying with the regulation? John Hanger, who was here, did a great job for me, as did Katie McGinney. I was fortunate to have 2 terrific secretaries of the Department of Environmental Protection, both of whom really advanced the cause of Pennsylvania energy, protected the environment, but protected it in a way that allowed business growth and development. And John said we needed 2 regulations to strengthen our oversight of the shale drilling. One was on well construction, because when the shale boom started here, they brought people up from Texas, cowboys, to build the wells, and they built the wells improperly, and that caused explosion. It caused methane to leak into the groundwater. Shale drilling, when the wells are done properly, shale drilling is not really a threat to the groundwater because it's so far below. Now, the frack water has to be dealt with. So we put in the regulation for well construction, and we haven't had an incident with a well that failed since the regulations have been in effect. Secondly, we put in a regulation as to the disposal of the frack water. What they were doing was taking the frack water and dumping it into our waterways. So we put in a regulation. This was a tough fight to get through, Gene will remember, a tough fight to get through the Republican legislature and the Environmental Quality Hearing Board, but we won. And the regulation says if you're dumping any frack water into a Pennsylvania waterway, you have to clean it first to the level of the Clean Drinking Water Act. That's the Clean Drinking Water Act. Well, what happened is that's such a tough standard that it forced the companies, and this fellow from the shale company told me, it forced the companies to recycle the water. They don't dump it in our waterways, by and large. There may be some that still do, but they recycle the waters, put it back into the well, put it into abandoned oil wells where it has some beneficial use. So it's been a real positive, and those 2 regulations have helped significantly. And look, the whole question of shale drilling is emotional, but one of the things that I think Bill Clinton proved for the country is that you can have proper environmental supervision and have business growth and economic growth. And we've got to make sure to protect the upsides of shale drilling, and there are tremendous upsides, but we've also got to protect the environment, and I think we can do both. So, and I think, Gene, your audit hopefully is going to help in that direction. So, when I first saw Gene this morning, I thought, I know running for office is an expensive proposition, and I was happy to give Gene some contributions from my political action committee, but I thought we needed to start a little campaign to get him some clothes. So it's a pleasure to be back, and I know that other speakers have probably mentioned the great job that all of you have done, but it takes a whole lot of people to build a good party organization, but it takes a great leader, and you have one in Bob. Politico, PA, named him as one of the 10 most effective county chairmen we've got, and I think that's an accurate description. And Bob, keep doing what you're doing. When I ran for governor, people said, well, you're going to do well here, but you're going to get killed in York County. I actually didn't lose York County as badly as I thought in the first time, in 2002, and I did surprisingly well, didn't carry, but did surprisingly well in 2006, and a lot of it's because of all of you and the leadership that Bob has provided. I also want to note Kevin. I'm going to talk about Kevin at the fundraiser. I had the pleasure, of course, working with Mayor Bracy, but the economic development person is often the key to making a city work. Mayor Pulaski in Allentown was economic development director for 2 or 3 administrations. He finally ran for mayor, became mayor, and Allentown's undergoing the same type of renewal that you have here. Kevin is a delight to work with, and is creative and innovative, and I think he'll make a great state representative. And it was important to all of us that we get someone of high quality to fill Gene's spot, because as Gene might tell you, there aren't a whole lot of high quality legislators. And Kevin will, I think, step in and do a great job. Now, people are always asking me, not necessarily the people in this room, but ordinary citizens are always asking me, what's the difference with both parties? I hear a lot of rhetoric, but in the end, doesn't Wall Street control them all? In the end, isn't it money that really pervades everything and really calls the shots? And there's something to that. We do a lot of fundraising in Wall Street. When I was DNC chair, I spent a ton of time up in Wall Street raising money. And the influence of money in politics is far too great at all levels, including many elected Democrats. I know that if you injected me with sodium pentothal and asked me, did you ever give a city or a state contract to someone because they were a campaign contributor to you, I would say no, and I would be telling the truth. But I will tell you that it makes it difficult, and it also creates the impression of impropriety, even if there's no impropriety there at all. So we've got work to do, and we're not angels and they're not the devil. And I think it's important to realize that there's so much demonization in politics on both sides of the aisle, in state capitals, in Washington. It's pitiful. But if I were to tell you, just by example, what's the difference between parties? The difference is that we, by and large, have stood by our basic overriding principles. And when you think about why you became a Democrat, I'm sure your story is similar to mine. The Colonel brought my book here for me to autograph. And in my book, in the introduction, I talk about how I became a Democrat and why I became a Democrat. And I became a Democrat because of my father. I was 5, 6 years old when he started talking to me about politics, and he never was in politics. He wasn't even a committeeman or anything like that. He was a businessman. He worked very hard, didn't have time for politics as an avocation or a vocation, but he cared very much about politics, and he loved the Democratic Party. I mean, he talked to me about how FDR saved the country, and he loved Adlai Stevenson. In fact, I relate in the book that the only time I ever saw, my father died when I was 14, and the only time that I ever saw my father cry was the night that Stevenson lost in 1952 to Eisenhower. I was 7 years old, and we were coming back. We had gone out to the corner grocery store, which was about 2 blocks away. And in those days, you didn't have television. There were no election reports. There was a little on radio, and we were there around 9:15. And on the radio, as we're checking out, it said, it appears that General Eisenhower has won enough states to be the next president of the United States. And in that 2.5 block walk home, for the first time and the last time, I saw that strong, proud man with tears rolling down his face. And he always told me that he believed that the Democratic Party was the only party that cared about ordinary people. And we weren't an ordinary family. We were an upper middle class family in New York, but my father cared very much about ordinary people, had a great relationship with the workforce that he had. And he said, Democrats are the only hope for ordinary folks in this country. And when some bumps along the road, that's been true. It was true in 1952, and it's true in 2013. There's no question about it. And if you just look at, there are so many examples you could pick out, but I just jotted down on my way up here a couple of them. And at the state level, I talked about the one that Gene talked to you about, and that's Medicaid dollars. It's absolutely stunning that the governor hasn't accepted those dollars yet. And I have said publicly that I hope he will reconsider. He has sort of left himself a little bit of an out, because he said he wants to discuss it with Secretary Sebelius. They've had several phone conversations. And although politically, it would be better for us, for the governor to stick by his guns and not take the Medicaid money. I don't know if you saw the poll. 71% of Pennsylvanians think we should take the Medicaid money. Now, 71%, sometimes I think you can get 71% of Pennsylvanians to agree today's Saturday. So 71% is pretty good. So politically, it might be best for us to do it. But there's sometimes that things transcend politics. And whether it's 600,000 or 700,000 Pennsylvanians, I know there's some dispute as to where it would fall. That's an awful lot of people who don't have health care and would. And most of us in this room, there may be some exceptions, but most of us have been fortunate enough to have had health care throughout our lives and to be able to provide health care for our kids. But think about it for a second. Think about if you had a 5-year-old daughter and she kept complaining about something and you didn't have health care and it wasn't serious enough, you thought, to take her to an emergency room. So you gave her some children's aspirin and it went on. Finally, it got bad enough that you went into the emergency room. And after an hour or two of tests, they came back and told you, sir, your daughter has leukemia. And you delayed her getting treatment for 4 or 5 months. Plus, you have no money for her to get treatment now. Interesting thing is, 20 years ago, childhood pediatric leukemia was 90% fatal. Because of all of the wonderful advances in medicine, it's 90% curable now. But treatment has to start early and it has to be intensive. And you have no money even now, knowing that she has leukemia, to get her that type of treatment. You can't get that in an emergency room. It has to be consistent, 2 times a week treatment, and you can't get that. What would you do? Do you remember there was a movie where Denzel Washington took a hospital hostage to get his daughter treatment? Well, you might just do that. Imagine how you would feel watching your son, your daughter, your mother, your father, watching somebody waste away and die because they didn't have access to medical care. And that's in the richest country in the world. The richest country in the world, which is the only one of the developed nations not to have guaranteed health insurance for all of its citizens. We can't let that happen. And it's my hope, and I've tried to nudge the governor publicly in that direction, because as much as it would be a good campaign issue for us, it's too important for 600,000 plus Pennsylvanians. But what were they thinking? Gene said, and he was slightly inaccurate. Gene said it doesn't cost the state anything. Well, it does cost the state something, not in the first 3 years. In the first 3 years, the feds pay for 100% of the expanded Medicaid pool. In the 4th year, it goes down to 97%, and then in the next 6 years, it goes from 97% to 90%. So we pay 10% and the feds pay 90%. Right now, in ordinary Medicaid, for the existing Medicaid pool, we pay 55% and the feds pay 45%. So for this new pool, the feds would be paying twice what they normally pay, and we'd be paying only 10%. Now 10% is some money. It's in the tens of millions of dollars. What are we talking about here? It's helping people survive. It's saving children. It's not that much money. We, before that, everyone in this room would be for that, and for that enthusiastic. They're against it. You know how they can pay for the expansion of the Medicaid pool and also put hundreds of millions of dollars into basic K through 12 education? If they enacted a severance tax. Now what in God's name possessed them not to enact a severance tax on the shell companies? I tried for 3 years. And we should have gotten it done during those years, and we didn't. And it's one of the biggest failures that I had in my time as governor. usually by just banging the Republicans over the head or just by drawing a line in the sand and staying there. I got the Republicans to eventually do what I wanted them to do, but I couldn't on the shale tax. And the interesting thing is, let's look at their arguments, why we didn't have a severance tax. And don't be deluded into thinking that this fee that they've enacted is anything close to a shale tax. We're leaving $600 million a year off the table by not having a severance tax. Well, the Republican argument was it will stop drilling and we'll lose all the investment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I thought that was pretty ludicrous, but I decided to check, and I called West Virginia. Joe Manchin, who's now a senator, was the governor then, and he was a friend of mine. I said, Joe, what happened when you enacted your shale tax? He said, nothing. I said, did business slow down? Did the number of permits they asked for stop? He said, no, the year after the tax was enacted, permitting went up by 150%. So much money is to be made in shale drilling that there's no effing way that they're going to stop drilling. In fact, I had the companies this close. One afternoon, I had the companies this close to agreeing to adopt the West Virginia tax. The West Virginia tax is in the middle. Some states have a higher tax, other states have a lower tax. I had the companies this close to agreeing to it themselves till the Senate Republicans backed them off. And it makes absolutely no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And what's the answer? What's the real answer? Why don't they want to enact a severance tax? That young lady in the green sweater. Speak up. I can see it, but they can't.
They want their pockets lined with the money from them.
Right. They get huge amounts of money from the shale companies in campaign contributions. The shale companies gave Governor Corbett in 10 almost $1 million in campaign contributions. And they gave key legislative leaders, I think the state Senate President Pro Tem got $300,000 to a state senator. I mean, it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. So don't believe any of the rhetoric. They just don't give a damn about ordinary folks. They don't give a damn about those folks. You know, if you get a Republican to tell you the truth, like Representative Turzai did on the voter ID law, if you get them to tell the truth is, they'll tell you, well, none of those 600,000 people vote for us. So why should I care about them? Well, I may have been old-fashioned, but when I got elected governor of Pennsylvania, I thought my job was to take care of 12.4 million Pennsylvanians. Not the one. But the bottom line is, they just do not care about vulnerable people generally, and there's some exceptions, but they do not care about vulnerable people, and they do not care about ordinary working families. That's not the first thing on their radar. It's not the first thing on their radar. Flip to the national scene and what's going on now. Now, for those of you who watch MSNBC or CNBC, you've heard me often, at times, criticize President Obama. I don't think on this issue, the debt, he has led courageously. He enacted the Simpson-Bowles Commission, and the report came in, and it was a good roadmap for getting this done 5 years ago. And instead of taking it, it was his commission, and taking that report and trying to get it through to Congress, he backed away. And he backed away for political reasons. But the president has evolved on this in many ways, and he's doing much better in leadership, and he's put a decent plan together. And the plan that he has together to avoid the sequester and to basically maybe put the debt issue to bed, and you put the debt issue to bed by a long-term plan that over the next 3 decades will ensure that our debt never becomes higher, goes back down and never becomes higher than 60% of our GDP. And that's a laudable goal. And the president has agreed to cuts, and the $618 billion that came from the revenue enhancements, the taxes for the fiscal cliff deal. We've done about $2 trillion in debt reduction. We need to do about another $2.5 trillion to reach that figure that I just talked about. And the president's put a plan together, 2-to-1 cuts versus revenue, which will almost get us there. It needs a little bit more, another $300-400 million in cuts. And remember, these cuts, we're talking about 10-year windows. So people who say, well, the cuts are going to hurt the economy, You can phase the cuts in over 10 years, and for example, change CPI. Has very little effect in the first 10 years. But in the second decade, which is also important, it has a very large effect. So you do these things phased in, but it's important for the growth of the country. So the president's offered a great plan, and the Republicans are saying no. And they're saying no for only one reason. They like the spending cuts. Change CPI is in it. In fact, the president's going to have a tough job convincing our left, Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi, to accept change CPI. He's going to have to work hard on it. That's what leadership is about. Gene will tell you there were many times I had to convince a lot of our Democrats to go along with things that I was doing. Forget Republicans, but a lot of Democrats. And the president's going to have to do that. But he's doing the right thing. But the reason this all is blowing up, and the reason we don't have any long-term solution, and the reason we're going to have these silly sequester cuts are about millionaires. It's all about millionaires. What the president has essentially said three things in terms of how to get the revenue needed for the third of what he wants to do. He wants to essentially enact what he calls the Buffett rule, which says that if you earn over $1 million, $1 million, I mean, think about that. That's a stunning amount of money. If you earn over $1 million, no matter what, you have to pay 30% rate. You remember Governor Romney eventually filed his returns and he said that he paid 14%. There's no reason why an ordinary working person, a secretary, a sanitation worker, pays 28%, and we allow tax accountants and lawyers to make sure that millionaires pay 14% or 11%, or in some cases, absolutely nothing. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with saying that a millionaire has to pay roughly the same percentage of his or her income as a secretary or as a sanitation worker? 90% of the Americans, if they understood before that, and it helps protect us because then you don't have to cut so much money out of LIHEAP. Do you know what LIHEAP is? Low Income Heating and Assistance Program? Think about that. There are Americans in this country who go without heat, whose houses burn because they keep the stove on. It's the only way they can heat themselves and their children. In the richest country in the world, there are Americans who go without heat, and that's now. And they insist on cutting money out of LIHEAP and so many other good programs. So that's where the line is drawn. And you look at the loopholes. The president wants to cut a loophole that gives oil companies about $4 billion a year in tax credits. Now, the oil companies, in case you haven't noticed, over the last 10 years, they're doing great. Even in 08, 09, and 2010, in the teeth of the recession, the oil companies were doing great. I'm going to ask you a question, and there are three parts to it. And if you get this right, I will guarantee you 2 tickets to the next Philadelphia 76ers championship basketball. Oh, you have little faith. Well, I will admit it's probably a good idea if the person who gets this right is on the youngish side. Name me the companies that have had the greatest profit in the history of corporate America, the greatest yearly profit. I want to know number one company that's had the greatest yearly profit, the second company that's had the second greatest yearly profit in our history, and the third company that's had the third greatest profit in U.S. history. Anybody know the answer? Anybody want to take a guess? All right, number one, this man says Exxon, BP, and Shell. 1, 2, 3. Anybody else?
G.
G didn't pay any taxes, but they're not up with the oil companies. This is actually a trick question. This is a trick question because the answer to the number one greatest profit is Exxon. The number 2 greatest profit is Exxon. The number 3 greatest profit in U.S. history is Exxon. We're taking $4 billion, which over the course of time, 10 years, which is the way they figure with the sequester and the cliff, is $40 billion. I mean, it's unbelievable. We're cutting $600–700 million out of the LIHEAP program. $4 billion in 1 year. I mean, where are their priorities? What are they thinking? Where's their heart? Where's their heart? And you know, the businesses always complain that we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. 35% we tax our corporate profits. But what they don't tell you is just what the businesses in Pennsylvania didn't tell you. When I became governor, Governor Ridge had done a good job knocking down the corporate tax rate. It was down to 9.9%. We were still in the top 10 states in our corporate tax rate. But I knew from the campaign that there was a sham, because 74% of Pennsylvania companies pay nothing on the corporate net income tax, because they all shelter their income in Delaware by getting a little office in some warehouse in Delaware and saying that's where their corporate headquarters are. 74% pay nothing. If you adjust that, our state income tax isn't 9.9, it's 3.4%, and we're in the lowest 10 in the country. And the same thing's true at the federal level. The businesses will complain to you, and you hear it all the time. Corporate tax rate is too high in this country. Well, Fortune, not exactly a liberal news media outlet, Fortune did an analysis of the top 2,000 companies in America, the biggest 2,000 companies in America. And guess what they found? What do you think the effective tax rate, after all the loopholes, what do you think the effective tax rate was for those 2,000? No, it wasn't 0, it wasn't 2, it was 17%, which would put us in the bottom half of countries in the world. So close the loopholes. If we close the loopholes, we can generate revenue and lower the overall rate, which is what Simpson Bowles recommended, what the president recommended. So this is just a long way of saying there's a huge difference. And if we had a chance to explain this, to go into every American's home and have a rational 1-hour discussion, I mean, we'd win. We'd win. And lately we have been winning, but we've got to keep it up. And 2014 is hugely important. You know, I've had this argument for a long time with givers who always give in presidential years. I have this argument with them. I say, if you really care, and by the way, when I was DNC chair, most of the people who gave us money were giving us money. Most of the big givers were giving us money, even though it was detrimental to their own pecuniary interest. Because President Bush had promised, when I was chair, it was 2000, candidate Bush had promised to have these big tax cuts, and Vice President Gore said no. So when someone who's got $100 million contributed to us, he or she knew that they were contributing and their taxes would go up. Although Bill Clinton proved one thing. When he raised taxes on the top 2% in 1993, their taxes went up maybe $80,000, $90,000 a year, but their net worth tripled. So they paid $80,000 more a year in taxes, and their net worth increased by $15 million. Pretty good deal, pretty good deal. So their priorities are wrong. They're screwed up. Our priorities are right. We don't always get it right. We don't always implement it right. But it's a question of heart. That's what in the end it comes down to. It's a question of what type of America do you want to live in. And I don't care how comfortable I am. And I was about to say sad to report to you. I'm happy to report to you that I am now in the 1%. But it doesn't matter what type of America you want to live in. That's the question. Do we want to live in an America where someone can't get their 5-year-old child health care to treat pediatric leukemia? Of course not. Do we want to live in an America where a 78-year-old woman who's worked most of her life and helped contribute to the war effort and made this country great, where she's cold because she can't afford to pay increased heating bills? Do we want to live in that type of America when we've got the level of wealth we have in so many areas of this country? Of course we don't. Of course we don't. And 2014 is important because the issues that are crucial to the quality of life of people, education, healthcare, things like that, those issues are decided in Harrisburg much more than they're decided in Washington. Much more. So we have great turnouts. Our Democrats turn out in 2016. They turn out in 2012. They turn out in 2008. And in Pennsylvania, thanks to my home area, they turned out in 2002 and 2006. And I became governor first time winning 13 out of 67 counties, because we turned out. When we turn out, we can't lose. If we turn our voters out in 2014, we can't lose. And that means Philadelphia, and that means the Philadelphia suburbs, but it also means turning our Democrats out in York. Because the key here is holding the margin down. We can win in 2014. We can restore government that cares and government that has a heart. We've got a lot of good candidates and hopefully some more that will be getting to the race soon. And I don't want to make reference to any specific candidate, but I do know that Jean Pascal proved that someone from York can win a statewide election. And the good news for me is almost the entire Democratic field at one time will have worked for me. But we can win. We can win. And it's really important that we do. Not important because you want to go to a reception at the governor's residence. And remember, Tom, if you do run and if you're successful, when the Republicans are in power, it's the governor's mansion. When the Democrats are in power, it's the governor's residence. It's an important line of demarcation. But not for those reasons, not because you want to appoint people to positions, because we have the chance to make a definite impact on the quality of people's lives. We know that if we invest money in the right things, it can bring about changes. And I want to close by telling you a story. One Sunday on my last year as governor, I was on George Stephanopoulos' show. And I was on with a guy by the name of Mike Pence, who unfortunately now is the governor of Indiana. He was the ranking member of the House Budget Committee. Nancy Pelosi was the speaker at the time. And the reason I got on with Mike Pence wasn't with me that time, but Stephanopoulos showed me a picture of the CPAC convention, and Mike Pence was speaking. And he was at the podium and he was pounding the podium. He was saying, yes, we're the party of no. We say no to taxes. We say no to borrowing. We say no to spending. Yes, we're the party of no, and we're proud of it. Then the tape ended and Stephanopoulos said to me, Governor, what do you think about that? I said, it's a prescription for disaster for the country. You can't stop investing. Fox News, never one to avoid controversy, invited me and Congressman Pence on the next Sunday. And we were on together, sitting side by side, and they let Congressman Pence go first, and he came up with the same riff, no to taxes, no to borrowing, no to spending. And then the announcer said to me, what do you think, Governor? And I turned to Congressman Pence and I said, Congressman, you seem like a reasonable guy to me. Truth is, he didn't seem like a reasonable guy. But I had done, even back then, I had done enough of the TV shows to understand you want to be the nice guy. So I said, Congressman, you seem like a reasonable guy to me. Tell our viewers, if we don't invest in rebuilding and maintaining our roads, our bridges, our highways, our dams, our levees, how are we going to guarantee that they're going to be safe for the American people? And he was stunned. And there was literally 15 seconds of silence, which on a TV show is like years. And finally he said, when he wagged his finger at me, he said, there you Democrats go again, using the word invest when you really mean spend. That was the best he could come up with. That was the best he could come up with. Well, look, I will go to my last day on this earth believing, and I know we're right, that when we invest, when the government invests in things that make a difference in outcomes, that improve the quality of people's lives, that protect the most vulnerable citizens, that give opportunity to folks that never had opportunity before, we're doing the right thing, the best thing, and it will help America stay strong and continue to grow. Thank you all very much.